Well, friends, welcome to the Worship Circle podcast. In my journey of podcasting, it's been Elliott Moon. It's been 8 years, and you were the first guy to help me start the podcast. So welcome.
Wow. Didn't realize it was that long ago, but yeah.
Dude, it was 2017. And one of the things you've been on my journey, Elliott, and we'll talk about it in a minute, but you've been with me for years. Just as a friend and ministry, and we've been like within each other's orbit for a mighty long time, my friend. So welcome, and I'm glad you're here.
I'm honored to be here, Todd.
I remember one of the just fun facts. I remember being in Bill Deloach's office with you. I think I've told you this. There's these moments in your journey where there's lots of epiphanal things that happen, but I remember sitting around with you and me and a couple other friends in the music ministry at North Point, and you said, there's this thing coming out called YouTube.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there going, what is YouTube?
Yeah.
Little did we know, Elliott, what have we
stumbled into? What kind of society have we stumbled into? But yeah, I had no idea what it was, but it definitely turned into a thing. My curiosity is always piqued at most things, but I was certainly curious about that.
Well, you've always had your ear to the ground with technology and kind of things coming out, and you've always been one to try to solve problems that people might have or make things simpler that are complicated, and we'll get to that in a minute, because God's, I think, had his hand on you and your life and your story with that aspect, and that's how you're helping people now. But just to go back in time a little bit, for those of you who don't know, when did we first connect? Do you remember?
It was probably 1999.
Okay.
That
was it at North Point?
Yeah, I believe so. I don't know if we can, we may have crossed paths in the...
Were you playing camp, like youth camp world back Super Wow and all that?
Yeah, of course. So we may have crossed paths at some point, but the first time I really remember like having a conversation, I think was 1999 at 722. Yeah.
Amazing. So 722, you guys have heard us talk about that for years, just on the podcast, because Elliott, so many people that was kind of a phenomenon thing, you know?
It was a phenomenon thing, and I oftentimes on the other side of it, like, if nobody ever experienced it, does it just sound like, okay, who are these? I'm kind of sick of hearing about that. But it was, for anybody that was a part of it or attended it or was touched by it, it was really pivotal. It was radically impactful for my faith and the journey I've been on. So, yeah, we talk about it a lot.
What was God doing in your heart back then in the world of like pertaining to the word worship? Like, because you've been doing Super Wows and playing with, was it Jason Wallace you played with?
Yeah, Jason Wallace, that's right.
Thank you, Jason. And then we had some mutual friends, and then we show up at 722, and like, what was that like? Did you have a concept of worship back then, or were you like me, kind of coming into it, and Louis was there kind of shepherding all of us in this idea?
Yeah, that's actually a huge piece of the puzzle for my story. I went to school at Samford University, pre-med major, like, hey, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah. Going
to UAB for medical school, that's what I thought I was going to do. Started playing with Jason Wallace on weekends because he was a fraternity brother. I grew up, this may be too much story, cut me off if it's too much, but I grew up in a Baptist church in Texas, and they were thrilled that I was a drummer, but they didn't have any clue on how to use me. Yeah. So I always had in my mind, okay, church is over here, music's over here. And those two things don't really intersect, so those are just two independent paths that I happen to be on. And when I started playing with Jason, we started doing these youth camps. And there was a camp, one particular camp we were there, I think for 2 or 3 weeks, student life camp. And Louis was the speaker.
Okay. That's where it happened.
And I remember there was two, like, we're having lunch conversations, at whatever cafeteria of maybe Louisiana Tech or wherever we were. And you know how Louis does. And I've told him this before, but he threw out a question. He's like, hey, you ever think there's more to this whole worship thing than us just doing like camp music? Because it kind of felt like camp music at the time,
Yeah.
Like it could have been a YMCA camp or it could have been a student life camp. It
was like Father Abraham on steroids.
That's right.
Yeah.
And he's like, you ever think that there's more to this? Like there's more connection we can have with God through this whole worship thing than we're really Are we leaving some in the tank? And I was like, oh, well, I've never really thought about it before, because those two things have always felt like they don't intersect in my life. And then, a week or two later, he kind of threw out that question. It's like, hey, you ever thought about the fact that, hey, yeah, I know you're the drummer, but I think you've got a role in like actually pointing people to Jesus, not just laying down a beat for something. I was like, okay, never processed that before. And that really sparked something for me. Couldn't shake it. Started following it. God obviously planted a seed in my heart there that ultimately changed. And like the more we were involved, the more we got to lead, the more things we saw start to change. Yeah. See this whole worship thing start. And this is mid-90s.
Right.
We're seeing we're getting, colleges are starting to have a bit of a worship revival at that point.
Sure.
You're having these impactful moments. And I was like, man, I just remember thinking, I don't really know. I don't know what any of this looks like as far as degree and future and drums and whatever. I feel like I'm supposed to be in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And I remember telling my parents that even in school, and they're like, hey, if that's what you feel like the Lord's call. I mean, thankfully I had parents that were paying attention and listening to Jesus. And they were like, hey, if you feel like that's where you're supposed to be, go run at it. I was like, okay. And so that was a huge piece of the puzzle for me in changing the direction of like, hey, whatever that is, being a part of creating experiences and creating environments for people to connect with God on a really deep, different level. That's what I want to do. That's how I want to be spending my time. So that, when I showed up in Atlanta in 1999, I mean, I was right in the thick of all of that, and getting to see and be a part of a lot of that as well. So obviously I was really drawn to 722. I was like, hey, this is another place where this is happening. So I just want to be around it. I want to attend it, and I want to be a part of it. So that's definitely what was going on with me in that season when we first met.
Well, you've always been someone that has been an amazing drummer, and played with me, played with so many different people. I was thinking about the Exit 10 Steve Fee days, and
wow, yeah, just to call that back.
All the different things we all tried musically, and Catalyst conferences, and helping shepherd those teams. But I will say, it's like you've always had a heart of a worshiper, and I think you've had the ability to come in whatever your environment in, and I can envision you putting your hand on your chin and going, like what here do we need to keep, and what here do we need to let go of? You've always had that gift of almost a sense, Elliott, and I see this in you, like the ability to realize the fragility and urgency of the day we're living in. I feel like you carry in you this ability to go, this isn't forever, so let's make the most of what we've been entrusted with here.
Yeah, well, man, that means a lot that you say that, and I'm grateful to hear that. I think that phrase, I don't know who, I mean, it's a common phrase, but I don't remember where I came across it the first time, but just this concept of being a good steward of the opportunities, your gifting, the moments that you're in, that really resonated with me pretty early on. I don't know if it's the way I'm wired or if it's what was happening in my soul at the time. Yeah. But it's like, hey, be a good steward of the moment, the people, your gifts at all times. Mm-hmm. And that's how I try to live.
Where do you think that came from for you? Like it's. I mean, I see that in the way that you operate in the world, but not everybody comes into the space and brings that culture into things. But I think you've always had this ability to feel the weight of things, but also cause us all to laugh like crazy.
Well, that's funny you should say that. I don't ever feel like I'm the guy that gets the call, like, hey, who can we call for a good time? Let's have him. Oh yeah, we should invite him. But not to. Anyway, I'm not sure like where that landed for me. I honestly, here's a blast from the past name that I still hold in high regard today, Neil McClendon. Yeah, I feel like I remember him telling a story one time about someone in his church walking up to him and like somebody who was a senior, like they'd been around, elder in the church, had been around for a long time, and just walked up to him and kind of said, hey, always be a good steward of the mystery. that
Oh, wow.
comes with following Jesus and steering people towards him. And that phrase really stuck out to me. I was like, man, I don't know if it's just based on how I'm wired or what I was experiencing at the time, but like I really, or slightly, mystical in nature that I was drawn to it. But yeah, I just really am drawn to that. Like, hey, let's be a good steward of, because you can't always, it's not binary. It's not all ones and zeros.
Right.
So you can't always see everything. So just don't run past based on what you just know and what you see in the moment. Like there's so much more happening. And sometimes if you need to sit and like, hey, I don't know the last 30%. So let's be a good steward of what's possible.
So you mentioned Neil McClendon, you mentioned Louis. Any other voices in your formative kind of years that really impacted your thought process and who you were being formed?
Yeah, honestly, there's quite a few, but I mean the two really big ones to me. One was that Louis conversation that felt like that was the first throwing the switch in the train tracks in my life. Oh, let's go this direction now. Mm-hmm. And the second one was when my wife Corey and I first got married. She was on staff at Church of the Apostles here in Atlanta.
Yeah,
and when I was still traveling, doing a lot of music, when I was in town, I was helping lead the worship and put the bands together and put the services together for their young adult ministry. Mm-hmm. And the pastor over that environment, a guy named Lee Mason, now has a great church in Athens, Georgia. And we had gone over to their house for dinner. Corey and I had gone over to he and Lisa's house for dinner one night. And I was belly aching about something about the band, like complaining, like, yeah, they can't get there on time, or I don't remember. I was complaining about something, right?
Yeah.
And she's over there just cooking and doing her thing, and she just, says, "Well, yeah, you care about that stuff because you're a pastor." And I was like,
"Oh, wow,
I'm sorry, what? Like, what do you mean? What did you just call me?" And she's like, "No, you care about that stuff because you have the heart of a pastor. You have the gifting of a pastor." Never occurred to me. So, I'm not a great I'm a processor. So it's not like I went and, hey, tell me more about that. I was like, okay, that just kind of stunned me. Sure. And over the next couple of weeks, I started investigating, like, what in the world does that even mean? I don't feel like I'm the upfront guy that's teaching and preaching. I felt like drums picked me for a reason. I like being in the back, but being able to take everything in and view everything. It's the best seat in the house, right? And the more I dug in, it was like, oh, it's about being a shepherd. It's about gathering people and steering people towards what's good and true and right in the world, and not the guy that's up front and teaching all the time. And I was like, okay, that's starting to unlock something in me, that there's been this through thread, even at that point in my life. Like there was when I was traveling on the road, there was a reason everybody called me Dad. Like I was the dad in the band, right? Because I was like, hey, let me corral everybody, and like, man, is everybody okay? Everybody doing okay? Like that's just what I love to do, is it's the people side of things. Like I loved music. I loved being involved in this music thing because it was a vehicle for relationship. There's an opportunity to invest in people. Like some of my favorite parts about traveling and doing music wasn't the show side of it or the actual on stage part of it. It was hey, who did I get to meet along the way? And was I able to somehow move the needle in their life to some degree? Did I show kindness? Did I put a smile on their face? Did I offer an encouraging word? That's what I was walking away going, hey, that was the measure for me of like, hey, how am I doing? Yeah. But that's kind of put the nail on the head for me of, oh, yeah, I think I got this pastor thing, which clarified some things, confirmed some things, and then at the same time caused a lot of like, what the freak does that mean? Yeah. For my life. I'm a drummer. What does it look like to be a pastor and a drummer at the same time? Yeah. And where is that all going? And so anyway, it was a pretty fascinating seat to find myself in, but it wasn't until a little bit later, I was like, well, I feel like the only next step for me might be a worship pastor at a church. But who's going to let me be the worship pastor at a church if I'm not the upfront person with a guitar and a microphone singing, but doing it from behind the drums?
Yep.
I was like, well, I don't know, maybe North Point, they don't do things conventionally all the time. Maybe they're crazy enough to hire a drummer as a music director.
Sure.
And so I actually went and had a lunch with a good friend of ours, Tyler Reagan, who was, at the time was the service programming director at Athens Church.
Yeah. And
I said, hey, man, this is what I'm processing. This is what I'm feeling. I was in town, and I said, can we go to lunch? And sure enough, about 6 months later, I get a call from North Point, Bill DeLoach. He's like, hey, can I take you to lunch? I was like, yeah. And he's like, hey,
Wow.
somebody told me that you might be interested in being the music director. We've got a new campus opening up. I was like, well, I don't know who told you that. And then come to find out, Tyler was moving to go work there and say, hey, let's go launch this new campus together.
Right.
Yeah, so that definitely was kind of the next pivotal change for me, figuring out this pastor thing. What does that look like? Oh, I have a chance to go on staff somewhere. And the part about traveling and doing music that I loved, sure, the creative process, exercising my musicianship and gifting that way was great. But like, again, it was the conversations, it was the people. That's what I was really drawn to. Going on staff at a church, are you saying I get a chance to do that at a deeper level? Yeah, that feels like the right next step, even though I had never in my life anticipated being on staff at a church. Yeah. Again, music and church felt like two separate things to me for a long time, you know? And so, and in fact, I think there was honestly maybe even a sense of pride in there of like, well, I'll never go. I'm in bands that travel and do music for churches, but I don't want to be on staff at a church. That's just a different level that I wasn't ready for. And then God was like, no, let's go do this thing. And so, yeah, I said yes, and there it went for 17 years.
Well, as you're talking, Elliott, I just want to encourage our listeners, especially any of the musicians out there that are in that, you know, because I think you and I have both been there where and it's not that there's not anything at all wrong with just being a guitar player or just being a drummer. But as you're talking, and as we as a ministry have been journeying toward this idea that our name has been written on a white stone by Jesus and only He knows it, and the unique glory of God manifests in our story and our name through the power of Jesus and the Holy Spirit. It's unique and it's a one-time thing on this earth. And when I think about you, I get this vision of you. I love the fact you said sitting in the back on the kit, you're able to see everything, kind of assess everything, put your finger in the air, and figure out, Lord, where is the mystery going right now? Where are you leading us as a team? Where are you leading me individually? How are these people doing? So just to encourage you to say thank you for doing that. I feel like that's who you are. And for those listening to go, I think both of us would challenge people to go, have I limited my idea of who I am on the earth by like one brand I've been given or one thing I think I can do? There may be multiple things you can do really well that bless so many people, right?
Yeah. What a great word. And yeah, there's that concept of limiting beliefs, right? Everybody tends to walk into rooms and everybody's got limiting beliefs about themselves. Well, I am this, or this is where I've been, therefore this is what I do, this is what I'm capable of. And it's honestly been a journey for me to make sure that I'm not leading with barriers in my own life. Like, hey, well, this is just X, Y, Z. Here's the variable, my past, my history, what I've done and what I've only been able to do up until this point. You know, there's so much that's like, no, step into it. And I had somebody that was working with a professional coach for a while, and man, he dropped something on me that Dean Harbury, he dropped something on me that rattled me to my core. Yeah, you remember Dean? Yeah, he showed up in the halls when we were working there together. Yeah. And because I can tend to be, because of I've got that discernment thing of like, hey, I love sitting in the back and kind of always assessing, always looking and figuring out and noodling on like, okay, well, here's the best path to carve a little bit maybe. I do that really hard on myself. Like I go in extra on myself with that. Yeah. And he said, hey, what if life was a little bit less pass fail and a little bit more of a laboratory? What What if you viewed it that way? Because I think I did have in my mind, for some reason or another, I don't think I had, or maybe some performance mentality had kind of started to creep in. I had this like, well, it has to be right, or I can't even, explore it, or it has to be fully baked before I get there. For some reason in that season, I had got into that in my headspace. And he was like, man, I don't think life is as pass or fail as you think it is.
Right.
And think about it more like a laboratory. And the whole point of a laboratory is to run an experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And the point of the running an experiment is to see what you can learn along the way. Right.
Wow.
And then you take that, whatever you learn, and apply it to the next experiment.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, great.
That's great advice.
Yeah, it's, you don't go into a laboratory, it's not like hey, here's the hypothesis on the front end. I'm pretty sure it's not going to work, so therefore I'm not even going to run the experiment. Like that, you would never do that in a laboratory setting. It's like, no, you go run the experiment, see what you learn, no matter the outcome, and apply it to the next experiment. I was like, oh my word, Holy Spirit, I need help living my life that way. And that's been a really helpful framework for me to not limit myself. Like, no, run the experiment. If God's got an open door here, like, hey, run the experiment and see what you learn, and then go apply it to the next experiment, right?
Jeez,
see what you can learn along the way. Yeah, I mean, it changed my life for sure.
As you're talking about that, I'm thinking about songwriters, because I can edit myself as I'm trying to write, and it bogs down the authenticity of what needs to come out. And as you know, that's a messy process. Sometimes it's you screaming, sometimes it's you wailing at something that may or may not make sense to anybody else, but you've got to experiment to get the goods to come out.
Yeah, it's such a great mindset to have for any creative endeavor, because otherwise. Yeah, you start getting really pigeonholed in your thinking or shutting it down. And that's not a creative process. That's just trying to control an outcome.
Jeez.
Right?
How many of us fail to, create really beautiful work because we're scared? We want to keep those boundaries on it because that's safe for us. That's a whole nother podcast. Yeah. Backing up. We're going to pick up where we are now, but I just wanted to mention to everybody, you met Corey through 722, your wife, and you guys have 3 daughters.
Yeah.
What year was that about?
Well, fun back up even story just a little bit further. We actually met at Eddie's attic here in Atlanta.
Okay.
But pretty 2 or 3 months after is when we got involved with 722. But that was 99 when we met.
Okay.
Got married in 2001. And we have 3 daughters, Sophie, who's 20, Lily, who's about to be 19, and Ruby, who's 14.
Good grief.
So, yeah, man, life is good. Everybody's home right now for the summer, and we're back at capacity at the house, and it's a blast.
I remember when Corey, I first heard her name from the Bebo Norman album.
Yeah.
Somebody said, hey, Corey, Corey's been singing with us. She sang on a Bebo Norman record, and I went back and listened to it, and I was like, it sounded so great. And I just love her voice, man. Her heart always comes through in her vocal.
Yeah.
But I remember Ed Cash found her and plugged her in on that Bebo Norman album, and that was pretty fun.
Yeah, listen, a quick story about that for anybody that this might be helpful, but also I love telling the story. Talk about like the power of presence and just showing up in whatever moment that you find yourself in.
Yeah.
She was an intern at the Wesley Foundation at the University of Georgia after she graduated there in 97 or 98.
Yeah.
And she's this great singer, kind of got that folk vibe to her. And she thought for sure they'd put her on the worship team. And they're like, no, you're going to do hospitality. And she's like, oh, okay. So the year that she was there, she did hospitality and wasn't leading worship, wasn't doing whatever.
Uh-huh.
And so Ed Cash comes to do a concert at the Wesley Foundation. And she's standing next to him on stage during sound check, waiting to get his dinner order. And he starts sound checking to an Indigo Girls song, to which she didn't, if you know Corey, she's just like all of a sudden, oh yeah, that's home base for her. So she starts harmonizing. He's like, wait a second, come here.
Yeah.
he's like, you know this song? He's like, yeah, I know this song. She picks up the part and starts singing. He's like, hey, what are you doing next week? I'm working on this record.
Amazing.
Would you want to come up and sing on it? He's like, I'm recording it at my lake house somewhere in North Carolina. And so a buddy and one of Corey's buddies and her took off, and then she went, and she's like, I didn't know anything about it. Turns out it was this guy named Bebo Norman. That's the way everything's kind of happened for Corey in her life. Like, she's just there, and there's moments that she just finds herself in, and God's like, hey, cool, watch this, which has been a great learning.
If you want to hear those songs, is it 10,000 Days is the name of the album?
I believe so. Yeah, I think
Bebo
it was
Norman,
his first one, yeah.
Got the boots on it. Go
That's
back
right.
and listen to Corey. There's a song called Deeper Still, and I think there's one more she's on.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah,
and now,
a cool process.
Now Ed's traveling with his family singing. It's pretty cool.
He is. He's doing great things.
So you were a music director. What else did you do on staff?
Yeah, so music director for quite a while. Then I stepped into a role that we have called service programming director. It's kind of like equivalent to creative director or somebody that just oversees kind of all the elements of the Sunday service. Did that for quite a while at our Brownsbridge campus and at the North Point campus. And then kind of my last post inside of North Point land was working with our partner churches. There's this whole partner network of, and so kind of the creative consultant. So anybody that was a production director, a worship pastor, service program director, anything in that zone. And then we had about 115 churches at the time, I believe, that were part of that. So my job was to just love on them, resource them, help them do what they do, and be a voice that they could call and say, hey, how are you guys navigating that? But also creating groups for them to learn from each other and honestly create a little bit of community along the way. I mean, I know you helped out in Partner World quite a bit, but it was a really, I loved my time there. I think I was there for 4 years doing that. It unlocked something different in me. That wasn't just the hands in doing it all the time, but like really equipping others to go do. I was like, oh man, this feels like a really good use of my time in this season of my life, and I was really grateful for it. So, yeah, those are all the roles I held inside of North Point while I was on staff.
As you talk, Elliott, I'm just thinking about the word seasons. You've been in a lot of seasons, and what's cool is you're in a new season now. And how was it, like a year or two ago you jumped into this thing called Working Genius? Yeah,
about 2.5 years ago.
How did that happen? And tell people what that is.
Yeah, so I mentioned Dean Harbury earlier.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to get to work with a couple of different coaches while I was on staff. People just to help me figure out, hey, where do I want to go and how do I want to get there?
Right.
And so much so that I was like, I love being on the receiving end of this so much that like, hey, what does this look like? Is that something I would ever be interested in doing? Again, that kind of struck at who I was at my core, kind of that calling out the best in other people thing in just a different way, in a different format. And so, I don't know, maybe I think it was 7 years ago while I was still on staff at North Point, I went through and took some courses and got accredited as an executive coach. And had a bit of a sandbox I kind of played in on the side. It's like, obviously that's helping me in my role with these churches. What do I do? Is that something I'd ever want to do full time? I don't know. Do I have the chutzpah to like go drum up my own business? I don't know. And in that work, it's always good to have frameworks you can call on. Like if you're in the business of helping people, it's like, we'll have a couple of different frameworks so that as different needs pop up, like, oh, you know what? I've got this thing that I've learned that would be really helpful to walk you through. And right about that time, this Working Genius model came out. It comes from the Table Group, or Pat Lencioni, if you know him. He's written a ton of books in the leadership space and organizational health space. Right. And at North Point, we were, big fans of his and had talked through a lot of the content. So when that Working Genius came out, I was like, well, I don't know that the world needs another assessment or personality assessment, but I trust that guy. I've always liked his content, so I've always found it really helpful. Let me take it.
Yeah.
Took it. I immediately was like, hey, I can see where this would be really helpful for the churches I'm working with and for this little sandbox I was using over on the side of kind of coaching clients along the way. I could see this would be really helpful because it's really talking about what I resonated with it about it, it's not just a personality assessment. It's mostly productivity. Like, hey, let's find some alignment around how kind of demystify the work process and how people like to show up and give their best to the work process. So it's like, that makes sense to me. So fast forward a little bit, started using it with the churches that I was consulting with, and I'd reached out to the table group. Not that I knew anybody there, but I was just like, hey, if there's ever like a certification for this thing, count me in. Like, let me know. I'd love to be with some of the first people. So I was in the first certification class.
Oh, wow.
And kind of became a heavy user of it pretty early on. Didn't realize that, but they're like, hey, this thing's kind of blowing up pretty quick. You're a heavy user. Would you want to help teach certification? Which I was like, no. I don't think I'm a teacher. Like, I just want to use it with people, right?
Yeah,
but then I was like, oh no, yeah, hey, you know what? That's going to help me. Like, if I'm teaching the content, it's going to make me know the content better. So when I'm working with clients, it's going to make me a better facilitator. So I said yes. And then one thing kind of led to another where, again, Working Genius kept gaining momentum. Popularity took off to ultimately where they just said, hey, we need a couple, and by literally I mean a couple, 2 full-time consultants to go help carry Working Genius and implement it with companies all over the place. Are you interested? And right about that time is also when, again, about 4 years into that role, was kind of curious, started asking, I was in that season of asking, hey, what's next? Like, I love what I'm doing, but is there a next thing for me? And God was just like, hey, check it out. Here you go. And so I was like, all right, well, let's give this thing a go, which was really scary. And I loved where I was at the time at the church and was able to leave really well and loved it. But it was like, hey, let's go give this thing a try. And it's been, I'm really grateful for it because it's made me come alive in a lot of new ways. And it's stretched me more than I've been stretched in quite a while, but it's been really good.
What would you say are some of the things working with churches, Elliott, they're kind of typical of what you're seeing in culture right now? I mean, that's probably a whole nother session, but just I wanted to touch on it because I know you work with a lot of churches and teams. Yeah. And what are some of the, if for the listeners listening who are on a staff team and are curious about Working Genius and we're going to give them a way to get in touch with you at the back end of this, but just anything you're seeing that it's kind of, man, these are pretty common issues I'm seeing right now.
Yeah. Common issues are leadership conversations around who's qualified for leadership and who's not, or who has leadership capacity and who doesn't.
Yeah.
One of my favorite parts about the conversation, I'm like, hey, doesn't matter what this assessment spits back out to you, whatever your combination of letters are, or whatever, like, hey, anybody can be a leader. Like, anybody can step up and add value, especially if you're self-aware. Yeah. If you're not self-aware, it doesn't matter what your combo is, right? If you're somebody who's not paying attention to who you are on the inside, you haven't done any kind of work in that space, man, you're going to be leading with a lot of landmines behind you. And it can be it's a challenge. And this is in the world of kind of introspection and self-awareness, this is kind of like a 101 or 102 level class in that it doesn't go super deep dive, it's a great kind of way for people that maybe haven't paid attention to something like that before to get into it. But one of the other things that we talk about all the time, I know you and I have caught up about this, but something else we talk about that, in organizational health world, not just in Working Genius world, but is healthy conflict. Or if you want to be a healthy organization, kind of tier number 2 in this whole 5 dysfunctions of a team or 5 behaviors that we talk about all the time. Number 1 is trust. You got to have vulnerability-based trust on your teams. What does that look like?
Yeah.
Part 2 is you got to have healthy conflict. And forever, it's just been like this. It's been pretty easy to see that the church doesn't do that well at all. And I don't mean the global church necessarily, or even like the entire congregation. Specifically, church staffs don't do healthy conflict very well. And there's a lot of nuance to that and a lot of reasons why. But That's something I'm really paying attention to these days and trying to figure out, hey, how can I help move the needle there? Because healthy conflict is how you get to the best ideas, and it helps you push past like insecurities and like, hey, well, I'm not coming after you. I want to feel the freedom to say, hey, I disagree, and not you take it as a personal attack or feel like it's disrespectful or dishonoring. Like, no. Like, let's get over ourselves and like, let's get on with the best ideas, because the work that we're up to is really important. It's a big deal. So that's one of the things that's on my radar right now.
Elliott, would you say that like distrust can be like a disease that spreads in the staff? Like
of course.
If it starts and it's not nipped in the bud, like that idea can, and that dynamic can spread from one relationship to the next, and it's just like playing whack-a-mole at that point.
It's all fear-based, right? I mean, it's like, it spreads really quickly. And usually when I'm talking about trust, like there's predictive trust, which is, hey, I trust you to do your job so I can do my job, or I trust you to behave a certain way so that I know how to behave, right? We really are talking about like vulnerability-based trust, which is, hey, I trust you with me as a person. Like, I trust that you enough for me to say, hey, I don't know the answer to that. Or, hey, I think I messed up. Or I think I need help with something. Or I don't know how to do that without the fear of like, oh, well, I guess I just disqualified myself from my job because I don't have all the answers. And newsflash, nobody does.
Our friend Steve Cuss has this phrase called human-sized.
Yes, absolutely.
And on a session he just did, he was like, name your favorite people you've ever worked for. And every time it was what you're talking about. I could be real. I could let my guard down. I knew they loved me. I knew they were for me, and we could have honest conversations. The flip side of that is the monster that inflates themselves to be bigger than they are. They're not human size, or the person that withdraws and they're like little tiny themselves. They're not themselves. All that to say, I just really appreciate the fact you're digging into helping, and the idea of knowing yourself well is not something that is front page news in a lot of cultures. Yet I feel like personally, from what we've experienced in Worship Circle, it needs to be on the front page.
It absolutely. I think we owe it to ourselves. I think we owe it to the people that we interact with on a regular basis, the people that we lead. But I mean, most importantly, we owe it to ourselves to dig into that. And I heard. I honestly, I think it was on Ian Morgan Cron's podcast years ago, Typology, and it might have been Adam Young. Honestly, I think when the first time I ever heard his name, I'll never forget this. He was talking about, that was the Enneagram podcast, and the road back to you, or back to whatever it's called.
Road back to you.
Yeah, thank you. And said, yeah. And I mean, I know you're deep in story work now, so this may be like, this is like MO number one with story work, but I had never heard this before. It's like, hey, we really need to pay attention to our story, because what happens to you when you're a kid is like you quickly form that operating system, right? Like, okay, what's my environment like, and how do I navigate this for good and for not great, for healthy and for not healthy? And he said, what story work or paying attention to your story is, hey, you've got this operating system, and what the very thing that allowed you to survive as a child, if you're not paying attention to it, could be the very thing that's killing you as an adult, because you're not in the same environment anymore. I was like, time out. I'm sorry. Let me hit pause. We were on a road trip to Arkansas as a family. Everybody was sleeping. I just hit pause. I was like, I need about 30 minutes of silence and trying to figure out okay.
Yeah.
That feels really important to me. I've never thought about that before. Like, hey, everybody's got an operating system that you grow up with. Yeah. And that very thing could be the thing that's stifling you or holding you back, or ultimately like kind of killing you as an adult if you don't kind of interrogate it.
Man, that's so important. And you've done story work here at my house. You and Christian Stanfill and Alex Nifong, our friend, we were here in September of last year.
Yeah.
And I'm such a firm believer in it. We're doing one next week with some other brothers from the community, but
yeah, I may just show up on the back porch.
you need to come to the dinner,
you didn't
man.
invite me, but
Come eat dinner with us, man.
Done.
So here's the thing, though. I just want our listeners to know that I believe in the work that God has set you to do with organizations and staffs and humans and people, because I know you love people well, and you're a pastor, and man, you're just really good at calling stuff out and calling people to something. So we're praying about just how to incorporate your skills in Worship Circle 2026 with some of the things that you've brought in from Working Genius. So if you're listening today and you or your church might be interested in partnering with Elliott, he's going to jump in at some point next year. We're going to try a cohort where he's leading some of you guys. If you want to apply, go to worshipcircle.com, choose a group for next year. We're already taking applications. But Elliott, for now, if somebody's listening and they're like, how do I get in touch with Elliott? And our staff might be interested in talking to him about what he could do to help us with the very things we were talking about. How do they do that?
Yeah, super easy. Email Elliott@workinggenius.com.
There you go.
That's Elliott with 2 L's and 2 T's at workinggenius.com.
Beautiful. That's super simple.
Yeah.
Hey, let's close with this. And I think I teed you up when we were talking or texting about this question, and I ask it to people because our purpose at Worship Circle is that you would know you're loved and not alone. Any moments that memories come to mind where you're like, God, you were with me. I mean, I know you've been with me all along, but any just moments in your life that were kind of the most pivotal in your journey that you would say, I know that that was God, and he was with me then, and he's with me now.
Yeah. Well, the very first thing that came to my mind when I was thinking about that question, and then the way I'm wired, I was like, okay, well, should I do a different one? Should I share a different one? Like, no, man, just share that one. Two things came out of the same story. This is 6-7 years ago at this point. My oldest daughter, Sophie, I'll never forget, we're sitting on the couch on a Saturday. Everybody else had left the house. She wasn't feeling great, so she was sitting on the couch, and her stomach wasn't feeling good. And man, she's a pretty tough cookie. Like, I can't remember. She just, she's got a pretty high pain tolerance, and there's just not a whole lot of medical things that have sidelined her in her life. And I remember I was watching college football, and she was sleeping on the couch next to me. And man, as clear as a bell, Holy Spirit was just like, hey, you need to take her to urgent care and go get her checked out. Because this is Saturday. So I was like, okay, well, urgent care. I was like, okay, let's just be on the up and up and let's go. Right. And sure enough, it turned out to be a pretty big deal. Staph infection. She was in ICU.
I remember that.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you why you remember that, because the whole loved and not alone thing.
Yeah.
One of the easiest places for me to see how God takes care of us is through community. I mean, obviously that there's a thread through everything I've said today, like it's the people, right? But you and Carrie were the first people that showed up at the hospital that next morning. And, with us trying to figure out, when I walked in, we're like, yeah, she's got a stomach ache, to 3 hours later, the head of the ICU at Children's in Atlanta is going, hey, we're going to do everything we can to save her. I'm like, wait, I'm sorry. Like, what's just happened? And I was reeling, and I didn't know what was going on, but God reminded me that I was not alone and that he was with me through really great friends like you showing up. So,
man.
Thank
Dude,
you.
That's got me in the feels, because I'm right back in the hospital waiting room.
Yeah,
of
course.
I'm like, you're coming out, and Corey's there, and it's like, God, what's going on here?
Yeah, kind of dazed. And I mean, obviously, great news. She made a full recovery, and like a week later was out. But that's the back half of the story. That's great to celebrate. But yeah, in that moment, that was that was a dark moment. And yeah, you guys being there was like, okay, yeah, we're not just in this thing alone. We've got a friend, and God's with us through.
It was an honor to be there for you, and you've been there for me. And I just tell people, the older I get, that it's less about what you say to people and more about your presence. And there's going to be moments in all of our lives where we're all going to go through the valley of the shadow of death. We're just going to do it on this earth. And Jesus said, I'm with you always to the end of the age. But his tangible body is his people. And for Elliott Moon to show up and stand there with me means a world because of who you are and the history we have. And I say that for so many of our friends. It's like the older we get, the more when we see a person, we see the whole journey in that moment. It's a thick being and a thick presence versus something that didn't cost something.
Yeah.
The relationships that mean the most have cost us the most.
That's good.
So,
yeah. In the wise words of Ben Rector, it's hard to make new old friends.
Yeah.
So I'm really grateful.
Well, Elliott, thanks for being with us, man. I can't wait to see what God does through your work with so many organizations, but also as we pray about how to integrate what you do with what God's leading us toward over the next 3 to 5 years of just for leaders to be healthy and whole, man. People that have been entrusted with a gift and a microphone to actually know themselves, know where they were wounded and why, and know how God can heal, and then sing from that place and lead from that place. So
it's powerful in all the right kind of ways.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, but honor to be with you, buddy. Thanks for jumping on.
Thanks for having me, Todd, and thanks for anyway. Just love what Worship Circle is because of your obedience and the space that you're creating for that kind of work to happen. It's a big deal. So
thanks, man.
Thanks, Todd.
Absolutely. See you.